You're listening to Colorado Chamber Office Hours, a podcast that explores what matters most to business. I'm your host, Ed Sealover, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and editor of the Sum and Substance. Let's get talking. This week on Colorado Chamber Office Hours, we are going to address the issue that has been core to the entire second term of Governor Jared Polis, which will conclude at the end of this year, by the way. That issue is housing, and particularly housing affordability. But we are going to attack this issue today from a uniquely business perspective. First, let's set the stage and lay out what housing bills are advancing through the 2026 legislative session or have already completed their journey. Polis last month signed two bills. One would allow educational institutions, housing authorities, and other nonprofits to build by right on 5 or fewer undeveloped acres that they own and cut out the need to go through the local zoning process in doing so. The other allows county governments to use general fund money toward affordable housing and opens up some other financing options. Still on the move and facing key committee hearings this week are two other bills. House Bill 1308 would allow property owners to split their lots by right and sell part of the lots for a second home to be built there, with some guardrails around the practice. And House Bill 1114 would bar local governments from requiring minimum lot sizes any larger than 2,000 square feet. That doesn't mean that one couldn't build on a larger lot than that. It just means they couldn't mandate as a local government that the smallest lot possible to build on be any larger than 2,000 square feet. To help us understand what all of this means, we have today Ted Leighty, CEO of the Colorado Association of Homebuilders and an advocate for changes like the two I just described. Ted, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Now, you literally are in the business of building homes. So tell our listeners why you believe the government needs to step in via bills like this to ensure that your industry can build the homes that Colorado so desperately needs.
Yeah, great question. So 70% plus of the electorate, well, let's just say the citizens of Colorado, really it's a national number as well. They desire a single family detached home, right? We have seen single family detached homes, average and medium home prices just continue to go up and up and up. Some of those reasons, a big part of that reason is we have limited or minimum lot sizes and minimum home sizes in different jurisdictions. Um, where we've seen really good success with smaller lot sizes is somewhere like Houston. They have a 1,400 square foot lot size by right. They've seen 34,000 new infill homes being built between 2007 and 2020. So we're not dealing in theory here. We're trying to borrow a practice that another much larger metro area than Denver has already utilized to some great success. Their homelessness rate is much less than ours. Their homeownership rate is much better than ours. And those things are good. Those are things that our policymakers have been sought for a long time. So we have a product, single family detached homes, that is highly desirable, but very unaffordable right now to the many. So how do we make better use of the land, which is a big piece of why homes cost so much in Colorado? How do we make then better efficiency out of the infrastructure that's already in place? Well, you can do that. And how do you create more gentle density for a product that is sought after, that allows folks into home ownership? We can't build condos. We won't get into that today, why we can't. But we could build smaller single family detached homes if we legalized it, really. And too many cities don't allow that right now. So I think the governor, the legislature, or certain legislators, some of which served on city councils before and have been part of these land use applications and dealt with land use, have said, well, we need some other innovative solutions. And this, you talked about 1001, the Home Act. If you look backwards and look at a lot of the housing policy that either the legislature's done or cities have done, counties to some extent, they're largely been for rentals, right? The ADU bill, until you can lot split, the ADU bill is largely only going to be a rental solution. So we miss having that home ownership, right? Or having public policy encourage home ownership, or, which allows folks to build wealth. So we've been missing out on that. These two, I think, out of all of the bills that have to deal with land use, that have to deal with, elements of preemption, these two are the most market oriented. And these two are the first two that are really centered around home ownership first and foremost.
And underpinning this conversation, we should mention is the shortage of homes in Colorado. Tell us,
Yeah.
how big has that shortage gotten and why?
Yeah, our demographers tells us we're around, let's call it 100,000. I think 106 was the last one I saw. And I don't know how that how much that number's changed, but I think we can safely say we're about six figures undersupplied. And so what happens, right? Supply and demand. Your audience knows that very well. When we have a lot of dollars, when we have a lot of demand chasing fewer supply or less supply, the prices go up, and we have underbuilt largely since the Great Recession. So coming out of that 2009, 2010, our population continued to rise faster than we could, and our job creation continued to rise faster than we could build homes. So I think the proper ratio to keep kind of prices in check is usually one new single family detached unit per two jobs. From 14 to 2024, we were building one new home for 2.8 jobs. So we got out of whack there, right? So, and then we saw a lot of folks moving in from out of state, California, where things were already more expensive. So Californians could sell their homes there. They'd have a lot of extra money. They would come and bid up the prices here because they could. We talked so much in the news, right, for many years, especially around the pandemic and coming out of it, of the price wars or the bidding wars really around homes, and that proved to bid up a lot of homes. And the existing home market and new home market or new construction market kind of work in tandem. So it's really at its core, it's a supply and demand issue, and there's a number of policy areas that we probably don't have time to get into that have also contributed to that, like the lengthening. I'll just touch on one, which is the time it takes us now to entitle land. So from taking dirt to doing the horizontal development, curbs, gutters, streets, and then building vertically upon those improved lots, where it used to take, within a year, you could get all that done, maybe 18 months. Now, I mean, it was with two developers yesterday at the Capitol, 5 years plus to get from conception of what we want to turn this plot into a new community, just to get the approvals before they're even turning dirt.
And let's talk then about what these two policies that are going to be at
Sure.
issue on Thursday would do. First of all, the buy right allowance for lot splitting. What would that mean? How much do you think it would be used?
So I'll go back to the ADU bill for a little bit, and I'll talk about how that's largely, as it was passed, um, is only going to help rentals unless we can do something like splits, right? Because financing is key to all of this, right? Capital is key. Well, it's going to be hard for the average person that may have a small house on an oversized lot right now to go in there and get the financing they need. To actually build that ADU. But
An
if they
ADU
can,
being an
sorry,
accessory
an accessory
dwelling
dwelling
unit.
unit.
Go
Yep,
ahead.
good job, thank you. An accessory dwelling unit. But if they can split that lot and sell it, now somebody else can go in there and gain financing and build that. And they can either live in it as an owner, in an ownership scenario, or it could be the mother-in-law suite. So how much will it be used? I don't know. I mean, all of these together, why we've seen so many different bills is because it's going to take a lot of different efforts to actually fix the problem that we have. So the ADU bill alone, the land use bill from a couple of years ago, the minimum lot size bill, none of them on its own are going to get us out of the mess that we're in. All of them work together. The lot splitting bill and the minimum lot size bill are very complementary, and they do complement the ADU bill from previous, or if it wasn't last session, whenever it passed.
2024.
Thank you.
Who's
2024,
counting?
but who's counting? So that's we sat on the ADU bill. We're like, well, I think we're going to end up being a neutral on it. We're like, we're not against it, but this isn't going to help unless you can split lots. And here we go. 2 years later, we do have that lot splitting bill. So the market's going to dictate this. I want policymakers, the NIMBYs, property owners, existing property owners who often are the opponents of any new housing, to understand that and not be afraid of markets. And markets will dictate a lot of where this goes. Just because we're authorizing it to happen does not mean it's going to happen everywhere. It's got to make economic sense. It's got to make sense the way out of a lot, right? This lot splitting, especially with ADUs, is really only going to work when we have alley loaded product, or we're on corner lots, or
Mhm.
have that access to that second ADU without walking through, the front yard of an existing home. Nobody really wants that. If you can say, great, you enter from the back, I enter from the front, we can live copacetically on smaller lots. That's going to work, but it's not going to pop up everywhere, right? We're not going to see duplexes and triplexes and quads happen everywhere because of the land use bill from 2022.
Similarly, I want to ask the same question about HB 1114.
Yeah.
If it passes, how many homes, maybe even just in the Denver metro area, do you think would be built on smaller lots? Would that one have maybe even a little bit more appeal than the lot splitting?
I think that's where you're gonna get a lot more bang from your buck. You're gonna because that can be utilized in infill situations, but most importantly, it can be utilized in new master plan community or situations, right? So we could build new master plan communities, and we do in large extent. Central Park in Denver's one great example. Baseline up in Broomfield's another. Painted Prairie out in Aurora, where we can build 6, 8, 10 units per acre. The average in the city and county of Denver is 3.5 units per acre. We think of it being a much more dense city because we see downtown, or a lot of us that don't live here are always in the city center, or, pass more density on the way into town on some of the major thoroughfares. But we're 3.5 units per acre in Denver. We can go much more in much greater densities if local governments allow us to do that, or policymakers, if we legalize having smaller lots and smaller homes.
And how much is that actually going to bring down the price of homes if we
It
do
can
that?
definitely bring down a lot. I don't have an exact number for you, but I mean, if you just think about it, right? Square footage drives prices, right? Land drives prices. So if you're buying more land and a bigger home on it, it's always going to cost more. If I can if I can be on a 2,000 square foot lot, I've got probably a 1,400, 1,500, maybe 1,700 square foot, depends on how high that's going to go. Is it going to be 2, 3 stories? I'm going to spend less money on that. And it's going to be a new product too. So it's got a lot of years in it. Right. So you can bring down the cost of housing. I mean, I know our land's different than Houston, but again, going back to Houston, much cheaper to buy in a much bigger city where there's a lot more people, right?
Mhm.
Because they allow those smaller lots and smaller home sizes.
Well, I feel like we've just scratched the surface of
Yeah,
this conversation, but then again, I think this is a conversation that will continue
yeah.
even beyond the tenure of Governor Jared Polis. Ted Leighty, CEO of the Colorado Association of Homebuilders, thank you for coming on to Colorado Chamber Office Hours to discuss this today.
Thank you for having me, Ed.
All right. And now for the second part of our conversation, we are sitting down with State Senator Janice Rich, a Republican from Grand Junction, who's going to talk about the many ways that some of this housing package doesn't square with a number of members, actually of both parties, in the House and in the Senate. Senator Rich, thank you for coming on with us today.
Thank you for, inviting me. I appreciate it.
Let me start with a broad question, and that is, when you look at housing in the state, what do you view as the role of the legislature toward the affordability of housing and the availability of housing in the state?
Well, I wish that the state was a better partner, with local government when it comes to housing. It's been my experience in the last 8 years, and I'm in my 8th year in the legislature, that, uh, the state seems to think that they know better than local government when it comes to affordable housing. And even when I ask about the definition, what is the definition of affordable housing? No one can actually give me that.
And so obviously we're looking at about a half dozen bills this year that have attempted to deal with affordable housing. I'll take these a little bit one by one here, but in general, let me ask about the package, the bills that you're seeing come through. What are your biggest concerns with them?
My biggest concern with those is that they're taking away local government control. And I am all about local government. No one knows their communities better than local government. And every time one of these comes up, it's about the state knows best. And I do not agree with that.
All right, let's dive into a couple of them, specifically the two that are going to be coming before your committee this week. House Bill 1308 would allow owners of property to split their lots and sell part of it for a second house. There are some that make the argument, hey, this is actually a property rights issue. There are some that say, no, this is a disturbing of the local community issue. How do you view the argument around the allowance for lot splitting?
Well, this is how I feel about this. This is a Democrat backed housing supply reform, and zoning decisions belong to local communities, not one size fits all mandates from the state.
Do you feel like this is a mandate, or is this something that would just be used by a couple of owners of properties who felt like, hey, maybe I need money and I want to split it to get some of that money?
Okay, what are they going to take into consideration? Uh, the water, the parking, uh, everything that has to do with that particular housing development. They're not taking anything into consideration there. And if the state takes those uh, responsibilities away from local government, you're just going to have a hodgepodge of houses. And I mean, maybe that works for Denver because that's what Denver looks like. But, in an area that I live in, we respect property rights much more than I have seen it in this legislature.
Could something like that affect? I mean, I think we talk a lot about the people who own the property and splitting the lot. Could it affect more the people around them as well?
Absolutely, it could. You know, you look at the parking, you look at water. How are they going to get those water taps in there? Those have already been structured in that development, but now you're going to disturb all of that. And when I listen to people that live in the metropolitan areas, they don't care about whether you have nice streets or good parking. They don't care about that. But in the community I live in, we do care about those things. And the people around various areas do too. And I don't think that Denver, Colorado, or the legislators from over here should decide how that's done in a community like I'm from, which is Mesa County.
And I imagine there's going to be some similar arguments around this one, but I want to move on to the other bill you're going to be considering too, House Bill 1114. This is the bill that would say that no community that sets up zoning is allowed to define a minimum lot size larger than 2,000 feet. It's 2,000 square feet, excuse me. Um, Tell me what your issue is with this bill.
Oh, I have a lot of issues with this one.
Doesn't have to be singular. Go right
Okay.
ahead.
Because the central issue is not supply in isolation. It is who controls land use decisions, local communities, or again, a state government mandate. Housing should not be flexible and housing should be flexible and locally governed, not centrally mandated from the Front Range.
The conversation we had earlier in the show was with the Colorado Association of Homebuilders, who made the case that moves like these are needed to boost the housing supply here in the state. And by boosting the housing supply, that's how you're really going to let the free market affect the current housing affordability crisis. You get more competition going into the housing market. Is there? I know that you're a free market person too, as a Republican legislator.
Absolutely.
But is there any kind of twinge on that part? Do you feel like there's any push and pull between that reasoning and what you're saying, or do we really just have to back off and say that this is a local issue in this one?
This is definitely a local issue. I mean, you cannot mandate density without mandating infrastructure funding. And if the state is going to do this, and we've already proven time and time again, it creates unfunded mandates on the local governments. And that is exactly what a bill like House Bill 1114 would do, or even House Bill 1308.
So let me ask, and I'll leave this one wide open here. How do you think the state needs to deal with the affordability crisis and what has been identified as the 106,000 resident shortage of housing right now? I mean, obviously, forcing more density isn't your idea. What's a better way to deal with this?
Well, I don't know that there's a silver bullet, but everything that this administration has come up with in the last 8 years has not worked. And I don't know why they think this is a silver bullet because this won't work either. Not in various places of the state of Colorado. They don't seem to care how many houses you put on top of one another. But in other areas, we actually do care.
I mean, is this a government solution at all, or is this something where we've got to back away and just say the free market eventually will take care of itself?
I do believe the free market can take care of itself. But we have a current administration that won't allow that to happen.
Okay. Let me just ask you too. The bill is already gone through and it's been signed into law, but the Home Act, the bill that allowed for school districts, transit districts, housing authorities, other
Mhm.
nonprofits to build on available land was
Right.
certainly a point of great debate earlier this year. Um, Tell me, why was that a problematic law?
What was really a problem for me is that there's not gonna be any public input. They'd said, "Oh, yeah, there'll be administrative." Well, administrative is among staff. That's not with the public. And so whenever, like, I was in local government for 16 years, and when you are going to do something, that changes the look and feel of a community, there are public meetings about that, and the residents have a right to have a comment about that. They bought and they built those homes because they thought where they were living was not going to change. But now, with just administration, which is just between the staff, if they decide they wanna just throw up a three-story building next to you, they can.
You, as one of the longest standing local government leaders before your election to the House and to the Senate, have you tried to sit down with Governor Polis, who came out of federal government rather than local government, and explain your thoughts on local government, local control to him?
I never even know when he's in the building.
So I guess I'll take that as a no
No.
then. But I mean, is this something where with the next governor, as Governor Polis's term ends at the end of this year, as he's term limited out, I mean, do you think there needs to be a reset of the conversation about local control and state control?
I certainly hope that there is. We have several people running for governor, and some of them actually have some local government experience and understand it. And I hope that there can be a reset because at this point, like I said, in my 8 years, I think the legacy of this current administration is that hey, we took local control away.
Senator Janice Rich, I'm not quite sure how you feel about local control, but I appreciate you sitting down and talking with us for the Colorado Chamber Office Hours podcast.
Thank you so much.
That's it for our interview segment. Now let's take a quick look at what you need to know about the week ahead. All right, now let's look at 5 hearings you're going to want to know about this week. Wednesday, upon House adjournment, the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee will be hearing the regulatory review bill that has been the priority legislation for the Colorado Chamber this session. This is the one that would essentially say that state agencies have to review regulations more frequently and more thoroughly. This is scheduled in the House Business Affairs Committee in House Committee Room 112. Also Wednesday morning, the House Energy and Environment Committee is going to do the first hearing on House Bill 1337. This is a bill on facilitating nuclear energy development. You may remember that last year, the Colorado legislature declared nuclear energy to be clean energy. This would take the next step in figuring out how Colorado could attract small nuclear reactors to the state. The hearing is scheduled in the Old State Library. Wednesday afternoon at 1:30 p.m., the House Judiciary Committee is set to vote on a bill on arbitration reform, House Bill 1236. This is one we discussed a couple of episodes ago. The committee actually heard the bill already, but couldn't come to wasn't asked to take a vote. This time it will go up before the Judiciary Committee, 1:30 Wednesday, House Committee Room 107. On Thursday, then, there are two afternoon hearings you want to know about. The first one is going to be the Senate Local Government and Housing Committee. They will discuss the two bills we've spent this episode discussing, those on lot splitting and minimum lot size. I won't say any more than that. The committee hearing is in Senate Committee Room 357. But at the same time that's going on, in the Old State Library, the Senate Energy Committee is going to hear two important bills. One would create incentives to bring data centers to the state. Another one is the Sunset Bill for the Public Utilities Commission, which basically regulates and makes some changes to regulations that the PUC does, but could be a catch-all for all kinds of ideas being suggested to it. That's going to be worth watching in the Old State Library at 1:30. That's all for this episode of Colorado Chamber Office Hours. Once again, I'm Ed Sealover, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and editor of the Sum and Substance. I'll keep the conversation going at tsscolorado.com, and we'll see you next time as we explore the issues that matter most to business.